Hello, everyone, and welcome along to the Debrief Live on the Liverpool Echoes Blood Red channel with myself, Patrick Smith, and I'm joined by Liverpool.com editor Matt Addison to react to Liverpool's 3-1 away win at LASK in the Europa League. Yes, the Reds got their Europa League campaign off to a winning start. For the second time this week, though, Liverpool had a dreadful first half where they surprisingly found themselves behind, but then fought back excellently in the second. So, Matt, Liverpool.com editor, let's get your reaction to this one then. It's a pretty strange one once again for Liverpool, but 3 points nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's mitigating circumstances in terms of the slow start, at least this time. It's, 11 changes that Jurgen Klopp's made. There's a few players there that haven't played this season. Stefan Bajcetic, new role, hasn't played for 5 months, certainly at senior level. I know he made a substitute appearance for Spain's under-21s, but that's the only football he's really had since the injury that ended last season. So I think there is, an explanation really, at least this time around. In previous matches, Liverpool have started slowly and, there hasn't really been any excuse. I think at least this time there was. They maybe get a little bit lucky. I think it's a pretty soft penalty that gets them back into it. But I think from that point, they look a class above. And as soon as Mohamed Salah comes on, you can see just is desperate for the goal and he gets it. So I think there's enough there to explain why Liverpool struggled a little bit. But equally, I think far easier in the end than what it was looking like. I think that the decision really to not make to make as many changes as what they did was definitely justified. I think that is something that I would have done. I think I would have gone wholesale as Jurgen Klopp did. I didn't think that he necessarily would, but I'm glad he did. I think that's got to be the template because, quite clearly Liverpool are streets ahead of these teams that they're going to be playing against when they play properly and do, as we expect them to do. So, yeah, it's a good start. Obviously, they need to top the group and they're in a decent position to be able to go on and do that now. But, yeah, I think it was good in the end, but the first half was a little bit painful.
Yeah, it's becoming a bit of a theme on this show, isn't it, where we have the first 5 or so minutes reacting to the terrible Liverpool sluggish starts once again. And then, of course, the second 5 minutes or 10 minutes will be, waxing Liverpool how great they were. But let's get through the nitty-gritty then, Matt. It was a very, very sloppy first half. Now, granted, Klopp made 11 changes. It was an entirely new midfield, players playing at positions such as Bajcetic at right back. How did you think the first half went, though? Because Liverpool have got a bad habit, haven't they, of going behind, trailing in these first halves. But to be fair to them, the goal they conceded, it's not one that you can really do much about, is it?
Yeah, they could have been slightly quicker, I think, to close it down. But I think you've got to give credit. Sometimes it was obviously a very good finish, good goal. But yeah, it's a familiar problem, isn't it? They just need to start a little bit quicker and get into a position where they're in control. I think the problem they had for the majority of last season, we've seen it a little bit already this season in terms of just not being able to string passes together. Harvey Elliott has been brilliant so far this season coming off the bench and was much better in the second half. But for the first half an hour in particular, just couldn't string a pass together. He couldn't find, another Liverpool player. So that was a bit frustrating. I think, Gravenberch obviously coming into a new team, there's always going to be a little bit of an adjustment period for him. I thought there were really good signs actually from him as he warmed into it. Wataru Endo, maybe less so, wasn't particularly brilliant, didn't do loads, didn't particularly stand out. But I think that's the key really for Liverpool is that they've got to start with a little bit more intensity, but they've just got to be better with the passing. As soon as that starts to change, you suddenly see them being in complete control and suddenly the match changes from that position onwards. So I think that's what you'd like to see in future. It could have been a lot easier than what it was, but I don't think you can complain too much because they did have to step it up a gear. They did that and ultimately they were comfortable winners in the end. So I'm not massively worried by it. And as I said before, I think there's definitely a mitigation for it in that, as you say, 11 changes, you are going to expect a little bit of an adjustment period just to playing with each other, a few new players, a few different roles. I do think it was understandable to an extent. So yeah, no harm done in the end. Even if, for West Ham at the weekend, I would expect, Liverpool to be a little bit faster and a little bit better. Obviously, they'll have a stronger team out for that. There'll be, opportunities for them to show that, well, I suppose that the couple of times they've done it this season, there's been, a bit of mitigation. At some point, that has to stop. But, they've won. Let's not go too overboard.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I mean, not only were there 11 changes, this is probably one of LASK's biggest games in their entire history, particularly in Europe. This is their big one of the season, basically. So, of course, they're going to be up for it in the first half, whereas Liverpool, their 11 changes. To be fair, I think the goal Liverpool conceded, it's one of those where if you've got a man standing out on the edge of the box on the corner and they swing it in and score from the near post, whatever, you complain, why is that man on the edge of the box? I think now, you say, you have that shot, you try and hit that 1 in 100, and he hit that 1 in 100 shot today, to be fair to the last player, I forget his name, but yeah, great taking strike from him. But you touched there, Matt, let's move on to the good, shall we? You mentioned the midfield. What do you make then of Ryan Gravenberch's first start in Liverpool shirt? Of course, Wataru Endo as well. Nice to see him actually play in normal circumstances rather than coming on with 10 men or holding out a game, isn't it?
Yeah, I thought Gravenberch was pretty good, actually. There was a few nice touches. There was a moment in the first half even where Liverpool was struggling a bit, but he got himself onto the ball, tried to play that 1-2 that didn't quite come off to get into the penalty area. But I think that's something that we've just not really seen enough from Liverpool midfielders over the last couple of seasons. And you compare what he was offering there to what Liverpool had last season. They didn't really have that drive forward, the ability to take the ball under pressure or get into the box and add an extra player into the mix who can potentially score. I think we are going to see a great deal of creativity. We've already seen an assist. I thought he did really well with the goal. It's good work from him and Elliott, and obviously Diaz then puts it in. So there's lots of good things, I think, to take from it. There's obviously a lot more to come from him. It would be a lot easier for him, I'm sure, if he was to start against West Ham and have Szoboszlai and maybe Curtis Jones or Alexis McAllister alongside him. I think that would be a much easier game to come into. So I think, given all of the circumstances, I think he did really well, and there were good signs. I'm not really prepared to judge him really for another 2 or 3 months. I think if it takes him that long to adjust and get into the Liverpool team, then so be it. But the early signs are good. I'm sure we'll see a lot more of him, probably off the bench in the Premier League and that sort of stuff. I think there's clearly a talented player there. Liverpool really excited to get him over the line and get him in. So yeah, loads to come from him. But I think the Europa League might be his competition. I think that might be where he does that integration. And if he carries on doing what he's been doing, then I think that can only be a good thing for Liverpool.
Yeah, as you agree. Yeah, it's nice to see. And I think he was very industrious. Got his head down and did lots of dirty work. I know that sometimes goes unnoticed, but I was kind of looking out for it. Really impressed with him. And then Gravenberch, you can tell there is potential for a world-class footballer. You can just tell from the way he sort of glides around the pitch and those effortless touches. But of course, Liverpool fans will be thinking, oh God, not again, after he went down injured, another midfielder. But Klopp will clear that one up in his press conference, we hope. If not today, probably tomorrow. We'll have both of those for you on the Blood Red YouTube channel. So make sure you're sticking around and watching those, everyone, because we'll bring you that as soon as we have it and get Jurgen Klopp's reaction. But Matt, speaking of midfielders, one who's playing out of position today was Stefan Bajcetic, basically playing the Trent role. Now, I've been saying they should be playing a centre midfielder in that right back role to see how they work cutting in field. And Stefan Bajcetic, to be fair to him, took it like a duck to water, didn't he?
Yeah, it was something I wrote during the international break, trying to fill a couple of our slots when there wasn't much football going on. But I'm glad that Jurgen Klopp has tried it. I think it makes loads of sense. He came into Liverpool as a centre-back, so he is defensively aware. They've obviously moved him forward a little bit into midfield. He can clearly pass and dictate the game. I think all of the raw materials are there to make him a real promising player in that position. And you look at how many midfielders Liverpool have got, I don't think it's necessarily going to be easy for him to get loads of minutes in his preferred role. So, maybe that hybrid role, being a backup to Trent, maybe that can be something that they look at and can use a little bit more going forward. So it's definitely something I wanted to see. I think it was always going to be a little bit difficult for him tonight, given how long he's been out. The pitch wasn't great. The passing from the rest of his teammates wasn't great. I think you're going to see the best of even Trent in that role only when Liverpool are in control and they're dominant and they can kind of drift into those positions. And it's almost a little bit of a free role when Liverpool are at their best. We saw in the Villa game, we've seen it, when Liverpool have been dominant, whoever it is, whether that's Trent or Bajcetic, they've got the passing range and the intelligence really to just find little pockets of space. They can drop off a little bit, dictate the game from deep, but the only way that works really is when Liverpool are at the best, that the stuff around them has to work for that role to work. So tonight wasn't, it wasn't like a complete performance from him. It wasn't, this is a new option that we can now look at, or, even I'm sure if he'd have come in and absolutely stormed it, there would have been a conversation around maybe we do that and put Trent in midfield and all sorts of things like that. So it's not one that's going to get anybody overboard or carried away, but I think there is real potential when Liverpool are at the best. I think there's a real option to play in there in the future. And as I say, he's so young, he will just want to get those minutes. If the minutes come there as a number 6, as a number 8, it doesn't really matter. I think he's just a player that is so technically gifted that I think you could play him in, a variety of roles, and he's clearly very, very good.
Yeah, could not agree more. As this comment says, through the lads need more game time, see the best of them, lucky to get behind, but fantastic goal. Grew stronger as game went on, we got the win. But yeah, from Bajcetic there, it's nice to see him back playing, isn't it? He had those minutes, obviously, during the international break for the Spanish under-21s. Hadn't played a game for Liverpool since March. So yeah, great to have him back in the fold. He's a really, really talented young player. And it's handy as well that he can seemingly play in this right back role, as Joe Gomez, I think, is more suited to be the centre-back. Let's round off then, Matt, shall we? So the attack, once as ever, Liverpool relying on them to pull them through the game. Darwin Nunez played again today, scored again today. Luis Diaz played well, scored again. What on earth are you going to play as your front three for West Ham on Sunday, Matt? Because it doesn't really matter, I suppose. But then on the other hand, who should Liverpool go for as their starting front three?
I think the one thing I took away from tonight is the fact that Jota and Gakpo didn't start the game and weren't involved. So I think it'll be those two and Mohamed Salah. I think it almost didn't matter what Diaz and Nunez did today. The fact that they started suggests that maybe they won't be involved in the weekend's game, which is interesting. I thought maybe those two would have been the two for the weekend. Diaz is definitely my number 1 on the left-hand side. And I think Nunez against a team like West Ham, who probably will attack a little bit, and Liverpool might have a bit of an opportunity to counter. I think maybe that could have made sense. But I think it says to me that they're going to go with Jota and Gakpo. So maybe there's an argument that Gakpo is in there for a little bit of extra height from the set pieces for the weekend. So maybe that's the thinking with him. But yeah, I would suggest that my guess would be that Salah starts, obviously, and Gakpo and Jota. But it's not necessarily what I would do. But I think that's what we're probably going to see in the Europa League. It's going to be maybe Ben Doak +2, and then the other 3 are the ones for the weekend that follows. So yeah, definitely something to watch out for. But I think that would be my guess from this point.
Yeah, I mean, well, the game's coming thick and fast, aren't they? You're going to need all 5 of those, all 6, including Ben Doak, aren't you? So I think we'll be seeing them rotate in and out, apart from Mohamed Salah, of course, over the coming weeks. Of course, they've got West Ham on Sunday, Leicester the Wednesday after, and then I've got the game. Who's after Leicester?
Tottenham, is it?
Tottenham, that's the one. Tottenham, yeah, that's the one after that one. So yeah, plenty of fixtures coming up for Liverpool, so we'll definitely see that front 3 rotate. But yeah, that wraps us up here on the debrief. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Liverpool got their Europa League campaign off to a winning start, albeit in tricky circumstances after the first half, but they got the 3-1 win. Make sure you're sticking around with us here on the Bloodbred channel. We'll bring you Jurgen Klopp's press conference as soon as we have it. And of course, the post-game podcast going up on whichever platform you get your podcast from. And check out all the written content over at liverpool.com. But for now, thank you for joining us on the debrief. We'll catch you again soon.